Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss yet another statement from our shiny new Minister for Brexit Opportunities, in which Jacob Rees-Mogg, for all his Brexit bravado, has called for the UK to completely surrender to every country in the world when it comes to non-tariff trade barriers. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. I'm mixed feelings here about old Moggy as a Brexit minister. On the one hand, he's providing me with a lot of material. On the other hand, it's a little bit tragic. Just a little aside, I used to describe myself many years ago, for many years as well, as a cynical optimist. You know, I believed that the world was a very stupid place, but there was hope for the future. I've not described myself like that for a few years. But anyway, for all the talk of patriotism and how Remoaners wanted to surrender our sovereign to the evil EU empire, it is actually Brexiteers, Tory Brexiteers specifically, who do nothing but surrender our sovereignty. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, in his capacity as a Brexit minister, has now called for the UK to wave a white flag again. But this time it's a big one. Now, before I get onto his specific proposal, as reported in the Telegraph recently, let's go over how trade deal negotiations work in simple terms. Nation A and Nation B, or let's say Narnia and the Shire, they decide that there is scope for their businesses to sell more of their goods or services to one another. That would mean a higher value of exports, more money coming in, more jobs, better paid jobs, the whole caboodle. Brilliant. So, why do you need a trade deal? Why don't your businesses just sell more goods to that other market? Well, because of trade barriers. There will be paperwork or fees, maybe tariffs that make your goods more expensive in the other market, making it difficult to sell as many as you would like. So the way that trade deal negotiations work is Narnia and the Shire try to persuade their negotiation partner to drop some of these trade barriers. If there can be a reduced need for paperwork and or fees or tariffs, something like that, then their businesses will be able to sell their goods cheaper in the other market. But here's the thing. Every time you drop one of your trade barriers to them, you are allowing them to sell their goods in your market more easily. Now that will come at the cost of some of your own producers, some of your own businesses. Now you don't want that. So in order for Narnia to be persuaded to drop or at least lower one of its trade barriers, maybe for mushrooms, say, it has to be persuaded that a trade barrier that the Shire is reducing, maybe Turkish delight, will still mean a net gain for your economy. In an ideal negotiation, you would persuade the other side to drop all of their trade barriers completely in return for you not having to drop any of yours. That is the ideal scenario. But obviously, that's ridiculous. Who would do that? Well, it's funny you should ask. So let's leave Narnia and the Shire for a moment and enter a fantasy world, Brexit Britain. The Telegraph at the weekend ran the following headline. Jacob Rees-Mogg hails reports that transforms UK trade policy. So far, so good. Then the sub-headline. The Brexit Opportunities Minister says he backs calls to unilaterally accept foreign rules to free up trade. You what? Let me read that again. Backs calls to unilaterally accept foreign rules. Wasn't Brexit all about not following foreign rules? Am I getting something wrong here? The article goes on. Not demanding that other nations accept UK rules in return would dramatically free up trade and be the interest of British consumers, according to analysis by the Institute for Economic Affairs. Oh, and that Institute for Economic Affairs sounds professional, doesn't it? Oh, it sounds like they know what they're talking about. It's probably an independent group of academics and trade experts, isn't it? No, it's a lobby group for large corporations. And do you know what large multinational corporations really like? Getting rid of trade barriers without having to comply with any national regulations. So, of course, they would suggest that as many countries as possible drop trade barriers without the need to comply with any rules. The thing is that governments, not multinational corporations, governments are supposed to decide policy based on what they believe is the best for the country and its population. Now, different political groups will disagree on what that is, but that is supposed to be their motivation no matter their stripes. no government would ever drop all of its barriers to trade without getting something of at least equal value in return in their estimation. They need to balance their economy, preferably come out winning. Well, no government would do that until, of course, this one. Now, I will just say here, before I go on, that just because a blithering idiot like Jacob Rees-Mogg is smiling on the plan does not mean it will become official government policy. But that he is allowed to shoot his mouth off about such a plan suggests that neither the Prime Minister nor the Chancellor are minded to shoot it down before the idea takes hold. But anyway, back to this brain fart and why it would be terrible for Britain. So the first reason I've already alluded to, but just to be clear, if we try to open up any trade negotiations in future, what would we have to offer? I mean, the post-Brexit trade deals we already have are terrible because we conceded so much in our rush to sign on the dotted line quickly. Japan and Australia both knew we were desperate and so pushed us for a way better deal than should otherwise have been possible from their point of view. Australia especially, of course. But in future, there'll be even less need. Like, you try and go to the United States and ask them to drop some trade barriers to, say, automotive parts or something like that. Well, all right then, what are you going to give in return? Well, as is usual in trade negotiations, if you drop that trade barrier, we'll drop one for you. Then the US will say, but you've already dropped them all. In one fell swoop, you completely, massively diminish the need for any other country in the world to be keen to sign a trade deal with us. Not completely remove the desire, because this plan is aimed at non-tariff barriers. Obviously, tariffs are still in place and people would still like us to drop those. And certainly be scope for negotiating the removal of those. But the deck would be very much stacked against us, even more than it already is, because we'd be asking other countries to lower tariff and non-tariff trade barriers, and all we could offer in return is to lower tariff barriers. In addition, given that these Tory Brexiteers seem to have so much disdain for the EU, they'd actually be giving our European neighbours a huge stick to beat us with. Right now, our poor behaviour regarding Northern Ireland in particular could end up with the trade and cooperation agreement being dissolved if we take the piss too much. But that would come at a cost to the EU, and EU businesses. But if this idea is put into practice, it would be way less damaging for them than it is for us. I mean, way less. Because although the deal is weak, it's better than nothing. But if we drop the requirements of businesses to comply with our regulations, it'll make it way easier and cheaper for EU businesses to export to Britain. Another problem with this idea is that you would undercut your own businesses in your own market, and for no gain. That's the point, no gain. Obviously, in trade negotiations, you do harm your own businesses a little, but you're supposed to gain more. So there's supposed to be a net benefit to business. Right? This is like what the Australia deal does to British farming, but this is in a way that would impact every sector of our production of goods. Foreign businesses don't have to comply with our standards under this plan, but domestic businesses still would. End result is that the foreign imports can be cheaper than the British produced goods. Rees-Mogg says that this would be good for consumers, but it wouldn't. It would mean cheaper imports, and you think, well, it's cheaper imports, we can buy our goods cheaper. How is that not good for the consumer? But it would mean fewer jobs and lower pay because it's not helping our exports. We would be giving a competitive advantage to foreign businesses over British businesses. So you make those imports cheaper, how are we going to afford them? This is the polar opposite of patriotic. This is literally siding with everyone who is not British, whilst having the nerve to form part of the British government and standing in front of a flag. It's an outrageous assault on their own country. And this sounds like utter insanity. Like, how can anyone go along with this? This isn't even a distinction between left and right-wing thinking. It's abhorrent to both, surely. What this is, it's free market delusions. Now, free market ideas are very much of the right-wing, but this is a free market delusion. Brexiteers claim that they are champions of free trade. And then we've said, well, how come you've pulled us out of the largest and most valuable free trade market in the world then? A market that was continually expanding and has gotten even bigger since we voted to leave. Well, because they don't like that sort of free trade. See, the EU represents a free trade market that drives standards upwards. That's what it does. Brexiteers want the sort of free trade that has no standards. They also believe that if they act unilaterally on this issue, others will follow their example. But there is nothing in it for others. It's like someone going out into the street, taking a load of cash out the bank, going out into the street, handing £20 notes to people there. Here you go, here's my money. And then the next day you expect those same people to come out and do the same with their money. No. All they're doing with this plan is going to give foreign businesses an easier time selling to the British market with no payout for British businesses trying to export to other markets. As a result, it will make it much harder to negotiate terms with other countries that allow our businesses to increase exports. Our exports have already been hit badly by Brexit, as I shall be discussing later today, I think. We need exports to grow, and yet this plan would kick them in the knackers. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.